you recall the last time we were doing these notes, which was a few days ago, we were talking about how the Lebensborn program in the master race, they weren't getting kids fast enough. And so they started stealing babies from like Czechoslovakia and Poland. And when you think about how ironic that is, one of the requirements to be in the Lebensborn was that you did not have what kind of background? Slavic background, which is exactly where they're stealing those children. And we talked about there were 4 groups that the doctor would inspect the children, and then they would put them in one of those areas. It was acceptable to be used for the master race, sterilized, where they basically made you so you couldn't have children anymore, slave labor, which most of them died because they didn't feed them enough anyway, or they just killed them if they had some kind of a mental or physical disability, period. So we left off and I asked you, how many do you think were acceptable? You remember what the percentage was? 10%. Wow, isn't that just sad? Let me pull this up here. Yep, only 10% were considered acceptable, which means that the rest were either sterilized or killed. Most of them were killed, which is really kind of sad. And only 15 to 20% were ever even traced back to their parents. I tried to find a picture of this online. In the book that I read, that I told you about, it shows these ads from the newspaper. As soon as the war was over, a lot of these children put ads out and pictures of themselves. And then, I can't read German, but I had someone help me a little bit. And it basically says, I think I was born in this town. I think I'm this old, you know, and then they hope somebody would see their picture and find them. But where do you suppose most of their parents are? Dead. They were killed in the concentration camps. So it really is very, very sad. The fact that any found each other is amazing. There were a few, but not very many. So very sad. Now, take a look at this from the perspective of these poor children, because they really are the victims in this case. It's not like they chose to be a kid of the master race, right? Their parents are the ones that did this. And they really have nowhere to turn. We have no exact statistics for how many children there are in the master race for real, because once they saw the Allies coming into Germany, they burned every document, and the people that were in charge took off. And they left the Lebensborns with the children in them, by the way, by themselves. Horrible pictures. And most of them are born to unknown parents, because like I said, my relative was a person who was paired with a Luftwaffe pilot. It was a love relationship, at least from her perspective. She had one child and she loves her. You know, they stayed together for the rest of her life. But at the end of the war, they started using women like Polish women, and they would just have them pop out babies every 9 months, just like a baby factory. And in the end, that woman didn't really want to stay with all the 10 babies she had just had. You know what I mean? It was kind of crazy. So they would take off too, and these kids had nobody. This is a picture of one of the Lebensborn homes they discovered when the Allies came in. And you saw these kids sitting here by themselves with no adults taking care of them. And of course, foreign mothers were afraid to go back home because they had been sleeping with the Germans. So they were afraid of what might happen if they brought that child back with them, or if people found out what they had done. So it's really a bad deal. These poor children were just horribly treated. By the end of the war, the people in the towns that found out what was happening in those Lebensborn homes, a lot of them were burned because they were so angry that they had done this. Children ages 3 and 4 that they found, this is another picture of children that were found in one of these homes, left for like 2 days without anybody taking care of them. 3 and 4 years old, could not read, could not walk. Now think about, why do you think that is? They're supposed to be the master race, right? Why wouldn't they be able to walk or read? Any ideas? What's that? Yeah, because you had, what, 3 nurses for 50 children? So they had enough trouble just keeping up changing diapers, but you learned your stuff by your parents holding you up so you walked. Remember all that stuff, you know? And they talked to you, they sang to you. These children didn't get that one-on-one, so most of them were very behind mentally and physically because they didn't have the one-on-one that normal parents would. And they're shunned from society because nobody wants a master race child in their town, you know? And like I said, it's not their fault. They had no past, they had no parents, and nobody accepts them. When my aunt and her mother came to the United States, she definitely hid the fact that she was the secretary of Heydrich. She definitely hid the fact that she was part of the master race. But I'll tell you, we talked about fear, right? And how she would whisper in her ear the song, the poem she was doing for Hitler. She thought, when I interviewed them, this was probably 12 years ago, and I put it on tape, and I actually wanted to do a book about them. But her mother would not allow me to even speak about this in class until she was dead. Because she honestly thought that even now, if they found out who she and her daughter were, that the Nazis would come and kill them. Today, I mean, that is power. Power beyond anything I can imagine. So they were very afraid, for sure. And that is the end of the Master Race Notes. Any questions? All right. Good job.